one of the key factors for us is that with the divergent and multitude of voices in the franchising industry, I mean, just over 300 different business models involved in franchising, getting them all focused on one single page, getting them all engaged in and pulling in the same direction is a very difficult task. And one of the tools that we have found most successful in that regard is that numbers just generally don't lie. And we work with FRANdata, which is a company that is sort of the top of the mark in franchise data delivery. And they provide us with those facts and those keys in a non-biased, a non-prejudiced way that really forms sort of the long tent pole in the tent that we use to discuss franchising.
Sure.
So what are some of the ways that having this fact-based data to support your advocacy and government relations efforts, how has that separation helped in supporting?
I think there are a lot of misconceptions that people have. They see one franchise business model and they think that they're all the same. The brilliance and the beauty of this business model is that we are so diverse. I mean, if nobody would ever need to produce another hamburger if they were looking to just make a decent quality hamburger delivered in a quick amount of time. That's tasty and readily available throughout the country, and yet you have new concepts coming into existence all of the time because they have various different types of customer service, and they have sort of a unique brand and an ethos that builds up around them. And understanding those things are the numbers that are underneath them. You see this business. I used to work in the technology space, and people said that it was so competitive that companies that were in business one day and at the top of the pile were out of business the next day. And in franchising, you see that constant and aggressive, and it all benefits the consumer, by the way, competition of someone trying to get on top, making a better chicken sandwich, having friendlier staff, having quicker delivery, whatever those pieces are. And this market differentiation comes out, and making sure that you have an understanding of that competitive field and how that plays is something that FRANdata has really helped with over the years, because they can lay out a lot of the facts about the different brands that are out there.
Sure, absolutely. And, I think that, in addition to, what may be able to help you on the fact-based research side, of course, there are some, regulatory challenges that you guys have had to deal with over the course of time that I'm sure research probably helped you guys get through. Is there any examples that you have on that?
Sure. I think that, separating fact from fiction or people's impressions from what's happening out there is incredibly important to us. I always say this to the staff internally as new folks start with us. You really only have one reputation in this town, and integrity is the watchword and the job one for us. You don't get it back. You don't get your reputation back easily, and certainly you have to have high integrity, and you have to come with the right information. And if you don't have the right information in hand, if you're guessing and they're guessing, then you have just a bunch of people's feelings in the room, which is good on one level, but not productive in decision making. And so when the regulations that we faced have come up, we are trying to bring thought-provoking data into play for those government decision makers, be they sometimes at the state level and oftentimes on the federal side.
Can you name some of the recent legislative and regulatory challenges that franchising has faced, and how having research has helped support that?
Yeah, it supports the arguments that we make oftentimes, but it also supports our decision making, which is very important for us. Perfect example is the Republican passed tax bill at the beginning of year one of the Trump administration. We had been given 3 priorities from the board of directors: joint employer, joint employer, joint employer. And we were heavily focused in IFA's lobbying efforts on the labor side of the equation, when all of a sudden out of nowhere appeared this tax bill. It had been discussed, but it moved much faster than we thought. We started reading through the tax bill when it came out and opened it up. We found a lot of the provisions that we had discussed with members of Congress were not in there. We wondered, what does this mean for the industry? You obviously had big tax breaks for publicly traded companies and C corporations, which is, one part of franchising, but a much, much larger tail in franchising is the pass-through entities. So we immediately turned with that bill language to FRANdata and had them do an analysis of the bill. It turned out that the Republican passed tax bill was about a $1 billion tax increase on the franchise business community. And that was shocking to us, absolutely shocking, considering that big corporations still would have benefited heavily. So that meant an even higher tax increase on pass-through entities. So with those facts in hand, we formulated policy and went to work on Capitol Hill, and we were now working against solid numbers for the first time. It took us several months and a lot of the political capital that we have accumulated over the years, but we turned that bill around before it was finally passed and signed by the president from a $1 billion tax increase into an over $3 billion annual benefit for the franchise business model and for franchised businesses and people who are in business in the franchise space. And that was a huge, huge victory for us. But we would never have been able to measure that. We would never been able to know what numbers to go at if we hadn't had that information from FRANdata. And they turned it around this is significant economic modeling that goes into this, highly sophisticated. They turned that around in a heartbeat. It was amazing.